In China, it's much cheaper to produce basically anything. That's why most of the companies base their factories in China.
China is one of the strongest developing nations, right?
Yes, it is.
And India is one of the strongest developing nations as well.
As well.
What about the other nations that do not have basic infrastructure as much as China?
And they don't have that much of an issue as China and India do with carbon dioxide emissions. And even if they did, it's still better for them to buy technology from China on the long run because it's much cheaper than buying it from the USA and paying tribute every year.
Did we talk about buying technology?
No, you talked about transferring it and then the developing countries paying tribute every year, which is basically the same.
Why?
Because they still have to pay for it.
Why do they still have to pay for it if they're giving the profit back to those developing?
It's still paying for it. They don't get the profit themselves. They pay for it. Whereas if they bought it from China, they would have an initially invest. They would invest initially, but then they would get the money back over time, and eventually get as much money as they.
Oh, is it time? Oh, okay.
Okay, you can finish it.
And eventually make profit.
Thank you. In today's debate, Team Korea came up with a policy, and really, the opposition side didn't come and rebut anything on our policy. They never came back on why there's a need, and they never came on the practicality of our policy, and they didn't even come back on the solvency and benefits of our policy. Instead, they talked about something that's really entirely different and something that shouldn't be debated in today's debate. They talked about developed countries, shouldn't they be investing in their own country? But we're not saying that they shouldn't. And really, everything that they said today isn't really mutually exclusive from our entire case. And they had so many assumptions, and I'm here to clear out all of these things. And really, they only had a couple of key rebuttals, and I'm going to rebut this in my speech. Now, I believe Team Korea wants to look at two main things in order to understand this debate and understand exactly why we had a stronger stance and a stronger policy than their side. And these two are first, let's look at the capabilities of these developing and developed nations and the responsibilities. And then second, let's look at the benefits and harms that both sides presented. So to begin with, capability and responsibility. Now, they said that developing nations have the capability, that they have power, and yet they only gave you a single example of China. And there are so many assumptions in this because they said 55% of solar panels that are produced internationally are from China. Well, there's many aspects that you have to take into consideration. First of all, you have to take into consideration whether or not it's actually their technology, because foreign companies can go into China and just make factories and build it. And yes, that makes it look as if China is producing it, but that doesn't mean that they have the technology, that they have the infrastructure to actually do it. And they also said that it's cheaper, and that's why we need these cheaper kind of technology. But it's not because their technology is better. It's not cheap because their technology is better. It's because labor in China is cheaper, and that's why it's cheaper. Not because they have some sort of high tech developments that goes in queue with the developed nations. And really, they haven't provided a clear link into their single example. And they also said that developed nations don't have the capability. They said, quote unquote, that they're not the Supermans of today's nation. Well, actually, I think the U.S. is the Superman in today's society. I mean, just look at them. And really, if you're questioning their power and technology, I think it's kind of foolish to think that, because it's kind of obvious that that countries, developed nations such as the U.S. and like UK, have the money, have the technology. They have a multi-trillion budget where they can spend a little bit of it on more onto the environment. They have all this technology, they have great technology, and I think they haven't given us any clear, concrete examples or reason why they aren't capable. Really, they just assume, they just said that they're not capable, but they really haven't shown a clear link between them. And also, the responsibility issues. We said that 1 Australian's emission equals 7 Chinese emissions and 5 Indians' emissions. And really, if you look at it in a per capita basis, developing countries such as India and China aren't developing that much. And really, it's the developed nations who are doing these things. And that's why we propose a policy where developed nations do something for the developing nations, do something for the environment, and that's exactly what we propose in today's side. And so let's look at the second part, the benefits and harms of today's debate. Now, they said we gave you 3 benefits. We're going to save the environment. We're going to help developing nations, and we're going to help developed nations. And they haven't came up back on any of these arguments. Now, first of all, let's explain why it's going to help the environment. The environment, well, of course, we're building cleaner energies. We're giving cleaner technologies to these countries, the developing nations. So wouldn't that help the environment? And we're saying, because it's a global issue, because we're transferring technology into these developing nations, these people have a chance to use that technology in their domestic areas. So we have, China and U.S. and India and Brazil all working together to solve this global problem. Because we're giving them technology, they have, more possibilities and more capabilities into better protecting the environment. And they really haven't rebutted on this case. And also. We also talked about the incentives for the developed countries, because it's going to give these people a good image. They're doing something for the global environment, and really when you see a nation doing something for developing nations and the environment as itself, that's going to send out a good message to them, and that's going to make people want to buy their products. That's going to want to make people have more interest in those companies, and that in the end is going to help these developed nations, and also for the developing nations. I don't even have to explain, because we're basically giving you free energy, we're giving you free technology. So why wouldn't it benefit the developing nations? Because because they have so much to benefit from this plan. And so in today's debate, the opposition hasn't given us any harms to our policy. They haven't rebutted on anything on our policy, and they haven't really given us a reason not to do our policy. Yes, they have given you other reasons, but that's not really mutually exclusive with our case. And because I know everyone wants to be a winner, and because we're giving a policy that makes everyone a winner, I urge you, ladies and gentlemen, to stand by Team Korea.
Hello, my name is Julia, and I'd like to start with a proverb, an American proverb actually, that states, tell me and I'll forget, show me how to do it and I might remember, involve me and I understand. And that's actually the policy that we want to prove, that if we let these countries to get involved themselves and do something about it, they understand it and they'll appreciate this problem, these environment problems, and they will make a change that will cut this CO2 emission. And not just let them be helped by other developed countries that actually don't have the necessary financial support to do that, because if they had it, they would do something about their problem in their own country. Because how the affirmative team stated that now, even though developed countries have money, it's actually the problem still remains that one Australian pollutes as much as 5 Chinese. So if Australia have the money, but still pollutes as much as these 5 Chinese, why didn't this money went to their country and resolved this problem? Because they don't have it, because they would have solved it if they had the money. Moreover, another clash that was discussed is about the responsibility. Who is to blame by the fact that every country pollutes? As they agree in the first cross-examination, everyone is to blame for their pollution. So if we do something that's wrong, we should pay for it, and not other countries should help us pay for it or something like that. Moreover, another clash is the fact of money issues. They said that actually developed countries do have the necessary money to invest in other developing countries, and at the same time to invest in their country. But actually it's something mutually exclusive, because if they had the money, as I explained it to you, they would first invest it in their country and reduce the pollution, and after they reduce this pollution,